Welcome to Adventures in Freeze Drying. Today we are going to make a hearty backpacker's breakfast. You will need 2 cups of basmati rice, 2 cups of your choice of broth, whether it be chicken or veggie broth or whatever. You're going to want either freeze-dried peas or frozen peas, a pound of meat of your choice. I like this cured bacon sausage, but you can use chicken, regular sausage, whichever you prefer. I'm not putting this into long-term storage. With bacon sausage, you're not going to get a 25-year storage out of this, but it's great for backpacking. 2 apples and a dozen eggs. So let's go ahead and get started. My rice is almost done cooking. I cooked it up with 2 cups of broth, 2 cups of water, 2 cups of rice, and 1 cup of freeze-dried peas. I did add an extra 1/3 cup of water because I added freeze-dried peas. I'm going to go ahead and get the apples added to this, and then we'll cook up our meat. Once your rice is just about done cooking, you're going to want to chop up your apples. You just want them to get a little soft. They don't necessarily want to be cooked until mushy. So it's okay even to throw those in right as the rice is basically done, since you're going to keep that hot and add some other ingredients. So I'm just going to slice these up so they're in little bite-sized slices. Size matters here. The thicker the chunk, the harder it's going to be to freeze dry clear through. So we're going to go ahead and chop these fairly thinly so that way they freeze dry easily and get completely dry. So as you can see, these really aren't very thick at all. So I'm going to get both apples chopped up and added to my rice and peas. I've started to cook up my bacon sausage on the stovetop. I added the apples to my peas and rice mix. The stove is off. I just added those in there, put the lid back on my Dutch oven. I'm going to get my eggs mixed up and ready to cook while my bacon sausage is cooking. You want to add a teaspoon of salt to your eggs. This is going to help in the rehydration process so they're not as rubbery. The other thing you need to remember with your eggs is undercook them. You want them still just a touch bit slimy, since these are going to be scrambled eggs. So when you add your boiling water to rehydrate everything and they complete cooking, they don't get rubbery. So a teaspoon of salt per dozen eggs, plus undercook these suckers so they're not rubbery when you rehydrate. I'll be back in just a second. I have my eggs all scrambled, so they're going to be ready to cook, but I'm going to let these sit for a couple minutes as I finish cooking my bacon sausage so that salt has time to work on those proteins to help this rehydrate better. I'm going to add my eggs. And again, we want to cook this slow. You want them still kind of slimy, cooked but not quite completely cooked. And that will help these to not be so overly rubbery when you're trying to eat this as a meal. So these are undercooked perfectly, not runny, but not quite done. I'm going to add this to my basmati rice, apples, and peas, and then we'll add the rinsed and drained meat, and we'll get this ready to go on trays and into the freeze dryer. I did drain my bacon sausage, then rinsed it and let it drain a little bit more so it's not as greasy as it could be. And now I want to mix this up really well. Those apples had been sitting in here just kind of steaming, so they're not going to truly be cooked, but that should help them just freeze dry a little more. They'll be a little soft when you go to eat this. They won't be crunchy, but you wouldn't expect them to be crunchy in a cooked meal. I am going to use my large freeze dryer for this. I'm going to, I think, we'll see how this goes. It should be at least 8 servings. Maybe it's 12 with everything added into it. So I'm going to spread this out and see if I need 2 or 3 trays. And I am going to use dividers to help me when it's time to portion this up after the fact. 1 recipe filled 2 trays. And I've decided to go with 1 tray of cheese for my 8 servings. I've added dividers just to make it easier for me to bag this up into individual servings, and I will add freeze-dried cheese to the top. I do not expect this cheese to fully rehydrate and melt or anything like that. It may still be crunchy. I just want to have the cheese for a little bit of added protein and flavor. The other thing I'm going to do right now is add some seasons to the top. You can use some oregano, some basil, parsley, Italian seasoning, whatever it is that you like, that you want to add to the top, some salt. I personally feel like there is enough salt in here already with what I added to the eggs. But I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of oregano on the top of mine to add a little bit of flavor as I'm rehydrating. Again, make this your own. I'd love to know what kind of seasonings you decided to add to yours to make it be exactly what you wanted it to be. And then I don't know if you have the same issue with your large freeze dryer as I do mine, but the top tray and the bottom tray never seem to quite get freeze dried at the same time. I have to take trays out and rotate them to get everything done. That's a great place to put something like cheese that dehydrates very easily, or I should say freeze dries very easily. There's not much moisture in it. So I'm going to put my cheese on the top, these in my middle, and I'm going to go ahead and run a half load in my large freeze dryer. So we'll see you for a taste test when this is all done. Well, it's about 7 in the morning. I'm done with swimming. I have some time before I go to work. It's 7 degrees outside and I want a hot breakfast. So I brought my car kettle along. My water's been up to boiling. So I'm going to add about a cup of water to one of my servings and let it sit here for about 5 minutes. The sun is finally starting to come up here. There's snow on the ground. Like I said, it's 9 degrees outside. I think I added too much water, and that's my own fault. I didn't try to measure. I just poured in, but let's see how the eggs and everything rehydrated, even though this is going to be soupy. No, that's my own fault. Well, I thought I had added too much water. This really isn't looking soupy. Everything feels tender after about 5 minutes now. This was boiling water when I put it in here because I used my car kettle to get the water nice and hot. The cheese is even a little melty, even though it had been freeze dried. I was not expecting that. So now let's see how it tastes. Those eggs are the one thing I'm curious about. I did the undercooking, but a nice hot meal in my car versus getting fast food or more instant oatmeal. This is potentially a win-win, even if those eggs are a little bit on the rubbery side. Overall, it's a win. Sitting in my car between work and swimming, I'm not driving 30 minutes back home. It's cold out. I don't want fast food. This is good. Are the eggs as good as if they were freshly scrambled, just kept in the fridge and I reheated this at home? Probably not. They're definitely a little bit, I'd say they even taste maybe overcooked rubbery-ish, but not so bad you can't eat this and the flavor's off. So if you needed a meal, you're backpacking, you're hiking, this is good. This is a win. Is it sitting at home reheated in the microwave or just made? No, it's not. Is it close? Absolutely. The only thing that is really off are the eggs. I also think my peas are a little bit off, but they were freeze dried, rehydrated, and refreeze dried. So if you're planning to freeze dry this, try using frozen or fresh peas instead of freeze dried peas. But otherwise, this video is available on Freeze Drying Cookbook in the free recipe section for the next couple of weeks. So check it out there. And thank you for joining me on Adventures in Freeze Drying.